If you haven't read Peace Talks or Battleground yet, then you should totally go watch my other fan theory video for Dresden Files. This is a spoiler warning for literally everything that has ever happened in the Dresden File universe, up to and including Battleground. So I was on Reddit the other day and I found this amazing theory about how the Merlin might secretly be an ally of Harry. Now this totally doesn't make any sense whatsoever since, you know, Harry got kicked out of the White Council and now he's like not allowed to be a wizard. But Harry's gonna be a wizard because, you know, Harry literally is a wizard. You're not a wizard, Harry. Not anymore. Yeah, you know how that's about to go down. But the thread made some really good points and they're really interesting and I thought, hey, we should talk about that on this channel. My name is Fee, this is Caffeinated Covers, and if you come here often, consider subscribing. And if you're having a good time, tell our algorithmic overlords by giving this video a like. After rereading Battlegrounds, I've come up with an, admittedly, rather tinfoil theory about what is going on within the White Council decisions during the vote against Harry. The theory that I have is that the Merlin is one of Harry's greatest allies. This does involve a decent amount of information from the Morgan microfiction, a brief review of odd actions, and the red cap statement that Harry needs to learn to read, because things aren't going to be spelled out for him. This happened in Peace Talks and Battleground. You know, when everybody's on the battlements of Marcone's castle, what we already know, in no particular order. Morgan promised Harry's mom he would protect her son. Morgan spent years pushing Harry to see if he was the warlock many believed he was, and even admitted in his journals he thinks he may have been unnecessarily cruel to a good man. Coming from Morgan, this means a lot, because in the beginning of the series, Morgan did not trust Harry at all. I think this is the scene where the Merlin was behind a veil. You know, when Morgan tried to get Harry to fight him, Harry did not take the bait, even though literally nobody would have blamed him if he had. Morgan was being a jerk. Morgan is stated by many, not just Harry, to be Merlin's right hand. Maggie Sr. has been stated to be just as stubborn as Harry. In Turncoat, Merlin accepts Harry's help in clearing Morgan. In Summer Night, the last test by the White Council for Harry to pass is to see whether or not he will attack Morgan. In Proven Guilty, the Merlin is against letting Molly, who has been accused of invading and manipulating the minds of others with magic, live. Back to the Morgan microfiction. It's stated that Morgan was concerned that Harry was still under the influence of Justin, and was pushing him to see if there were any magical controls in place. Despite this hardline stance by the Merlin, Molly is never persecuted by the White Council after Harry's demise. While we are led to believe in Harry's thoughts, it's because of Carlos. That's just what Harry thinks. I'm starting to think that Harry might be drifting into unreliable narrator territory as the story progresses, especially now that the Winter Mantle is influencing him as much as it is. Plus, it seems like anytime somebody soul gazes Harry, they come out scared. I wonder if Harry will ever be able to see what other people see when they soul gaze him. It could probably help him keep from going to the dark side. Harry has always made assumptions about the White Council, their actions and motives, based around his experience of being put on trial as a teenager, and he tends to think very negatively of them. It makes me really excited when we get stories in the Dresden universe that aren't from Harry's perspective. We don't get the same bias that we get when Harry's guiding us through the story, and it helps us to understand more holistically what's going on. Maggie Sr. was thought to be a problem to the stability of the laws of magic, as stated by Lucio. The Merlin is said to be a career politician, someone who knows how to get people to do what he wants. My tinfoil logic. I think the Merlin knew about Morgan's promise and what he was going to push Harry, and decided to take his side as well. Worst case, Harry was a warlock, and that would be proven. Yet time and time again, Harry demonstrates he isn't one, and acts to protect people. Before Marcone enters the picture, the White Council was a stand-in for all humanity. We see that Harry's disdain for the Wardens pushes him to try and save Molly, and again with the kid in the zoo day. I personally believe that this is intentional on the part of the Merlin. Looking at the trail with Molly, the gatekeeper openly calls everything before the arrival of the rest of the senior council a farce. The Merlin is even said to be quiet before levying a sentence, and lets the trial continue despite being the majority in this case. When there are members of the senior council that are missing from a vote, the Merlin gets to decide their vote unless they select a proxy. So with some members out of commission from the battle, the Merlin could basically do whatever he wanted with their votes. If he really wanted to end Molly, then that's all he'd have to say. Instead, he lets the trial continue and buys time for Harry to get the support to save Molly. Now with Battlegrounds. The gatekeeper is defending the gates and can't make the vote. The Black Staff and Listens to Win are injured and they also can't make it. This leaves only Christos, who we have seen little of and are led to believe is on the Black Council. Ancient Mai, who has been openly against Harry on multiple occasions. Martha Liberty, who had one real interaction with Harry and only voted in his favor in Summer Night because of Ebenezer. And the Merlin himself, who has been openly against Harry. The vote gets cast and Harry is kicked from the White Council, and a sentence is mentioned and waived. It was determined that Harry broke the first law of magic because of what he did to the humans that supported the Fomor. But given the circumstances, it was considered to be justified. Back to the Doom of Damocles times, y'all. But why is this even mentioned? If the Merlin was truly against Harry, he had enough votes to put a sentence out then and there. Instead, it's overturned, and that is mentioned to Harry. Kind of reminds me of the power plays that the Merlin likes to do around Harry to assert his dominance, but okay.
When the only person who could overturn the sentence would be the Merlin, as he has 4 of the 7 votes. Taking a step away from that, looking at how the mantle of the Winter Knight is talked about, and the constant clashes between the Summer and the Winter Knight, it's likely at some point that one of the two will end the other one with magic. Yet Harry never heard of the Fey Knights before the Summer Knight. Considering who they represent, it's highly unlikely the White Council would even have the jurisdiction to try them.
And as we all know, the White Council tries to keep to itself and not attract attention.
Despite this, in Harry's case, they allegedly put out a sentence on him at the end of Battlegrounds before overturning it.
How does that make sense? Why would you even antagonize Winter like that? Even though Athunu made Mab look really weak, we all know that she can throw down. I wouldn't want to meet her in a back alley.
At face value, it looks like the Merlin is just being cruel. But as I've stated above, he is the only one with the power to overturn, commute, whatever, a sentence. Given in the same book, we are told by the Red Cap to never take things at face value,
flashing neon light of a hint if I ever saw one.
I am inclined to see it as a message. After all, the White Council represents and has the power over human wizards only. However, Harry just lost Murph, fought a Titan, and is normally bad at reading things.
Understatement of the year, right there.
So he never really sees what looks, to me, like a very obvious message of, no matter what, you're still one of us. Why else even tell him about the sentence unless he really wants Harry to end?
I didn't get this point at first glance. Harry, like Molly, could be considered to be a subject of Winter, instead of being beholden to the White Council. If that was the case, then the White Council would consider Harry to be, much like the other members of the magical community that aren't wizards, non-human, and therefore less important. By flexing their perceived power over him, they're acknowledging that they still see Harry as a human magical practitioner. Now, if this was a slick way to say you're still one of us, or a way for the council to whip their magical staffs around and tell Harry to stop doing magic and causing problems or he's done, I don't know. Neither does Harry, apparently.
Moving back to Harry's stubbornness, any persuasive person, worth their salt, who has seen 13 to 15 years of seeing the kind of stubborn person Harry is, wouldn't have made the don't do anything statement if that is what they wanted after booting him from the club.
I.e., Harry's a child who's going to do exactly what you tell him not to do, because he can, and because he wants to.
Considering that was the official stance of the senior council, again, at this point a 4-7 vote with the Merlin, at the time of Harry being informed, I would argue that the Merlin realized he was in a bad position to support Harry politically after the information he set fire to 4 more servitors was given to him. I believe barring this, Harry might still be in the White Council with little issue. After all, it's like in Turncoat. Getting the support of someone who has been against you forever makes quite an impression. So instead, the Merlin sends a message that will provoke Harry to continue to focus on humanity instead of just isolating him into Mab's control. The entire decision, while seemingly rigged from Harry's perspective, doesn't make sense if the Merlin really wants Harry gone, or wants him out of the way. As we see, all that decision did was push Harry to make himself the Wizard of Chicago.
And as we learned somewhere, even though I don't remember where, the council did try to fill Harry's warden position, but literally everybody refused. They don't want Harry's enemies, and frankly, I wouldn't want them either. And apparently there's more supernatural shenanigans going on around Chicago than there are in other areas, so it's even harder of a job.
That is more or less the backbone of my tinfoil theory and what is going on. What y'all think? The way I saw it was that the Merlin knew Harry was in a very unstable place right now, even if he didn't know all the circumstances.
Merlin doesn't know the circumstances of why Harry's in a bad place. Harry has a bad habit of keeping secrets from literally anybody who doesn't 100% need to know. He's done this since the beginning of the series with Murphy, and in almost every single case, it doesn't help his friends and allies build any sort of confidence or trust in him. If Harry doesn't share personal information he likes, he's darn sure not going to share it with the Merlin, or anybody who would eventually tell the Merlin, for that matter.
Does he know about Murphy? He certainly doesn't know about Thomas.
Duh. Even Ebenezer didn't know the truth about Thomas until the end of peace talks, and look how that went down.
On top of that, Harry is ramping up as the Winter Knight.
Harry is scary as the Winter Knight. Who he is under the influence of the mantle is terrifying. Plus he's got all sorts of powers that wizards his age shouldn't have. He's uber powerful and out of control.
And public actions have been unflattering at best. He purposefully led everyone to believe that he was in a relationship with Lara, the leader of the White Court.
Even though she's kind of but not really his sister.
Because Harry was in an unstable place right after the battle that had left Harry absolutely exhausted, weakened, or pliable to certain manipulations, it was the opportune time to see how Harry would react to an overt threat, and see how much his time under the Doom of Damocles still haunted him.
The Doom of Damocles still haunts Harry.
By making the threat, by telling him to his face that he was essentially under the doom again, they would be able to figure out how to proceed from the way that Harry acted. Worst case scenario, Harry's gone. The Merlin wouldn't be particularly displeased about that, etc., etc. If Harry showed fear at the prospect, they could have brought him to the heel. If Harry had said something along the lines of, "You can't do that, I'm the Winter Knight," it would have shown mental weakness and signs of being subverted, and they could have written him off, enforcing the sentence.
This testing that's being proposed is something that the Merlin has done to Harry before. Like whenever Morgan tried to get Harry to fight him, or really any time that the Merlin and Harry were close enough to notice each other's existence. In a way, the White Council has been constantly testing Harry. They were doing this even when Harry was a warden and teaching young wardens how to fight and basically doing everything he could to help the White Council.
If Harry had reacted violently, declaring them his enemies, same thing. If Harry had just signed and accepted it, they could slowly bring him back into the fold, one small show of trust at a time. And if Harry acted with defiance on his own behalf instead of, say, as on the Winter Court's or the White Court's behalves, then they would know that his previous acting was just an act.
Harry being cozy with members of other coordinations terrifies the White Council. They can never be sure just where his loyalties lie.
The whole point of this threat was to gather information on how to proceed, to poke at Harry and see how he works so that they know how to work with or against him. Carlos is blind and scared and acting like a child. He thinks that he should be told things he hasn't earned the right to know. Spot on! Carlos is a little naive and really has the same stubbornness as a young Harry, which bears to reason. Then Carlos is still in his late 20s or early 30s.
Carlos is young, naive, and stubborn, much like a young Harry Dresden. This makes me think that Harry should be cutting Carlos a little bit of slack, especially since Carlos is working off a limited amount of information and is closely tied with the White Council, who obviously have the same biases against Harry that Harry has against them.
Also, Carlos wants Harry to trust and confide in him a little too much for my liking. I'm sure that's sending up big red flags to Harry. Pretty harsh interpretation of Carlos's perspective. Frankly, it would have been stupid to trust Harry. Harry isn't even remotely trustworthy from what Carlos knows.
From what Carlos knows, it's really hard to trust Harry.
They both gain some trust and respect for each other during Deadbeat. They become friends during mostly between book scenes. But during that time, Harry also starts speaking ghoul and viciously messes with one in front of a dozen children. At which point Carlos starts getting pretty worried about him. Harry takes a dangerous mind mage under his wing, under what I will generously term suspicious circumstances.
And in one of the short stories, Carlos has a really bad experience when he tries to get with Molly.
They finally come to it during the end of White Knight, after Harry shows understanding of another monster's language, and have serious conversations about Harry's relationship with the White Council, and how that was separate from his relationship with Carlos. Only Harry never again shows Carlos that courtesy. Next time, Carlos sees Harry during Turncoat, and by then Carlos himself is wrapped up in neuromancy, and I don't think he and Harry ever speak. Several months later, Harry shows up in Edinburgh, teetering on the edge of sanity, and this time he deliberately blows Carlos off. And then he rocks the world and ends over the rest of the book. Then a year later, psych! He's not gone! Harry actually just gains superpowers and allegiances to the monarch of all wicked fae! Meanwhile, Carlos was busy doing his job and getting crippled. By the time Battleground rolls around, Harry's been acting so off, even the people he sees regularly think he's not right. Hell, Butters friggin' bugged him. But Carlos still gives him chance over chance to prove he's still doing the right thing, and Harry just threw it right back in his face. The last straw wasn't even knocking Carlos out to spirit Thomas away. He gave him yet another chance after that. Carlos Ramirez is a dynamite man and a good friend who deserves respect, good sir.
The end of Changes definitely was suspicious. And again, Carlos gets limited information.
Okay, I clearly implied that Carlos was totally justified in everything he did and said, which, as you've laid out, is not true. And he is biased. But it's not fair to blame the current state of their relationship on Carlos. Harry stopped trusting him first. It was for pretty good reasons, i.e. the younger wardens had all in fact been compromised, and then there was Maggie. But the fact remains that he shut out Carlos of his inner circle of trust, and it's been downhill ever since.
Carlos is super loyal to the White Council, but he also wants to believe that Harry, his friend, is a good guy. Their bromance breaking into a million pieces is actually pretty tragic, and I think there are going to be dire consequences for it.
I think the simplest explanation for kicking Dresden out but not ending him is that 100% of what the Merlin does is based on how it affects the White Council.
The Merlin being in it for the sake of the White Council is honestly the most believable opinion to me.
So why would he want Dresden out, even leaving aside his personal antagonism? Quite simply, Harry has got into quite a few snares and tangles and has, as a result, dragged the White Council into the same messes. The war with the Red Court, getting Marcone into the Accords, his guilds with the White Court, etc., and now Harry is a member of Winter.
Harry becoming a member of Winter is scary, because his allegiances aren't certain, and he was always antagonistic at best with the White Council. Becoming the Winter Knight is huge, because he's basically Mab's attack dog at that point. It also means that he has somewhere to go if the White Council ever decides to come get him. He can just run to the part of the Never Never that's owned by Winter, and the White Council will basically have to declare war on Winter in order to get him. Didn't work out so well for the Red Court, and I doubt the White Council would have any better luck.
His actions on behalf of Winter will also endanger the White Council. If he was kept as a member, it would reduce the White Council's independence from MAB.
The White Council's independence from MAB is a really underrated consideration for the whole political stuff going on in the Dresden Files world. Like when Harry and Laura got engaged. Having loyalties to multiple accorded nations is really tricky. It leads to the different nations becoming associated with each other and having to back each other up in a fight. This does not allow the White Council the autonomy that they based the entire White Council on. Like, that's literally the point of the White Council, to have all the wizards under one jurisdiction. Which is why the White Council really didn't like Margaret Le Fay's ideas to change the laws of magic.
Not only that, but someone wishing to strike at MAB might be too weak to do so directly, but going after a more vulnerable potential ally like the White Council might be a bit more enticing. I'm not saying this is a good or bad idea. Being associated with either Fey Court right now is, well, it's an idea, but the Merlin is blindsided by his view about what the White Council needs. It's the same reason he keeps denying the existence of the Black Council.
Why would the Merlin deny the existence of the Black Council?
Now, for why the Merlin waived the sentence. Quite simply, the Merlin doesn't throw away a tool that he can still use. A sentence mark on Harry would demand that Ebenezer, as the Blackstaff, go after him. I'm assuming that the Merlin either knows that they're related or has calculated that ordering Ebenezer to end Harry would be too risky.
Making McCoy do anything he doesn't want to do is pretty risky. You think? After what we saw in Peace Talks, I'd want to be McCoy's buddy, make sure he's perfectly happy, and never piss him off.
Also, Harry himself has proven to be useful in the past, like when he exposed Peabody, ending the Red Court, etc.
Harry is really good at destroying things, and that is useful. Hell's bells. It's why Marcone and Winter and the Denarians and basically everybody else wanted to work with him. See books 1 through all of them.
He might be too much of a political risk right now, but letting him still be a piece in play may still be beneficial.
Honestly, with what Uthunu and the Fomor were up to, at the very least, Harry is useful as a weapon against them. And given how nasty the fighting was in Battleground, the Accorded Nations need all the help they can get.
Occam's razor would agree with that point. I'm just hedging my bets that people are more complicated than with this theory. I didn't look close enough, but does your theory hold true with how the Merlin likes to have 3 plans? Were there 3 ways to get the same info from Harry in the message Ramirez gave him? I ask because I'm at work and you've dissected this a lot more.
I wish my job was simple enough that I could just listen to fan theories or audiobooks all day and still do good work. I've tried it doesn't work out well. Orchestral music, on the other hand, top notch.
Technically, yes. It's not as clean cut as most of the Merlin's plans, and this was more of a broad theory than anything else. But looking at it over the course of the series, I can see a 3-step plan. The first test would be the Doom of Damocles, and how Harry operates under it.
The Doom of Damocles has always been a bit traumatic for Harry, and any goodwill he has for them or any good deeds he has for them is honestly a gift.
If he fails the test, he's done, as the Merlin's allegiance would not go to a warlock. The second test would be Harry's role as a warden. His actions being warden of Chicago, and most of the Midwest, does check out, especially since it was Morgan who gave him the role. The third test, I believe, will be Harry's reaction to being removed from the council, and his interpretation of the message I believe is being sent to Harry. I think the third test is still pending. They're going to need a new warden of Chicago. The last one with oversight of the area was Morgan, who probably had at least some brief on what was going on at Demon Reach. The new warden overseeing Chicago will have to be debriefed on Demon Reach, and that it's as much under the domain of the Winter Knight as a place can be and not be in the Never Never.
This makes me wonder why Harry wants a castle when he has Demon Reach. Sure, castles are cool, but an island that doesn't like anybody who's not you or your guests, and has a bunch of baddies waiting to be freed so that they can go fight stuff, seems to be a lot more useful. But we probably don't know how powerful the castle is yet. After all, it's supposed to have a bunch of magical power in each of the stones, so I'll reserve judgment until we learn more about that.
I don't think it will be anyone younger than a century. Harry's third test will be interacting with a warden. Being a warden in his and Marcone's, though I do see a line where Harry asks who has Chicago's only castle, city. That's a pretty cool idea for a test.
I can totally see Harry saying something like that. It's just who he is.
The Merlin will always set things up so that regardless of the outcome, he has the advantage.
He is a wizard. They plan and overthink things. It's just natural, and you don't get to be the Merlin by collecting bottle caps.
Also, there's a fact only recently mentioned in a gym Q&A. Kemmler was a recent warden of Demon Reach. It seems like maybe being a warden of Demon Reach is the Dresden Files version of being the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts. Well, the warden can kind of kick off an apocalypse just by opening the well. Imagine an army of beings that make Uthunu look like a pleasant, reasonable woman.
Insert Karen meme here.
If you're worried that the warden is even a teensy-weensy bit evil, deposing them out of an overabundance of caution is arguably justified. I mean, if some nut with a long history of violence and an outright genocide to his name started living alone in a fully functional nuclear missile silo, I'd sure start thinking, nope, 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 not letting that happen, not a chance. I'll happily pay the price to put a stop to this right meow.
An evil warden of Demon Reach is cataclysmic, and I would definitely want to stop them. This person could literally end the world for giggles. This is the thing that nightmares are made out of, especially with how Dresden almost went dark on Rudolph. The dude deserved way worse than he got. But if the person that Harry was being before Sonya started fighting him was the same person that got to control Demon Reach, we'd be hosed. I would root for Harry's demise right then and there. We like to think of Harry as the good guy, because we're 17 books into a series and he's our hero, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And after the revelation in Battleground that Mab was actually trying to do the right thing, which is also what's carved on Harry's monument in Graceland, and the increase in control of the Winter Mantle, the Harry Dresden we know and love could be receding into a deep place, and being replaced with dark, evil Sith Lord Harry.
It's a legitimately complicated question. I don't think the White Council is being totally unreasonable by being all poop your pants scared of what Harry is becoming. He hasn't been around long enough to see the White Council birth a monster, so he may lack perspective. And of course, there was all that talk of being bred for something and stars and stones.
All the swear words in the Dresden Files seem to tie back to whatever the apocalyptic event is going to be. Stars and stones, empty night, and maybe even hell's bells. I have a feeling that this was done on purpose.
Also, one of the previous wardens was Kemmler. And for what it's worth, this is why the White Council spent a large part of the war against him, just trying to keep him away from Demon Reach.
In a stunning turn of events, the White Council might actually know what they're doing, for once. Yay! I wonder who the two wardens of Demon Reach between Harry and Kemmler were. Now that's going to be an interesting little rabbit hole for me to go down later.
Well, the warden can kind of kick off an apocalypse just by opening the well. Yep, Battleground said as much in Cold Days. If anyone managed to set free the things in the well, seems like it would be bad, I said. Not bad, Battleground said. The end. I mean, would that make the unknown warden between Kemmler and Harry Lockhart? According to the Q&A, Kemmler was the warden right before Harry. Jim is asked by Priscilla who is the warden before Harry was. Jim answered Kemmler. Didn't he say something like the one before Dresden was Kemmler? That's what I heard. Yeah, I just checked and you were right. I think this is a setup on Jim's part. The Wardens of Demon Reach structure is as follows. Number 1, the current guy, Harry. A secret, another secret, and then Kemmler. Jim is holding back to make the reveal. I hope it gets shown that one of the wardens was Maglifay. I mean, Kemmler being at least one of the wardens on the island might explain the island's grudge against Rashid. I don't think that the Merlin is anyone's ally but his own. He's a politician, through and through. Harry is seen as a threat by enough of the council that keeping his own base of power demands he deals with that threat.
The Merlin is a politician, and he doesn't have everybody's best interest at heart. I think that this is a theory that makes the most sense, because the Merlin is always described as someone who is obsessed with the good of the White Council and the good of the laws of magic, or at least his interpretation of them. He also goes out of his way to make sure that Harry knows that he has power over him. If anything, Harry was a tool and was very useful in Battleground, so at least for now it's worth keeping Harry around.
And if he secretly suspects the presence of a Black Council, he isn't at all convinced that Harry's not a part of it. This was a no-cost move to divide his opposition. Ebenezer can't defend Harry without being deemed a renegade himself. Rashid and Listens to Win aren't close enough to the center of the council politics to break the block behind himself. If Harry's in opposition, he's isolated and a problem that will take care of itself, given the buzzsaws he routinely runs into. If not, he is no longer a scapegoat for the actual problem, which he can now isolate and crush.
This is an interesting point because the White Council really does like to blame Harry whenever it's convenient for them. After all, the plot in Stormfront is basically Harry trying to take out the Warlock before he gets accused of being a Warlock. Story of his life. Literally, see book 1.
I don't think the Merlin is anyone's ally but his own. I don't know why everyone keeps scrolling past this. This is the best answer. Keep in mind the political games have been going on for a long time. At the start of Summer Night, the wizards on the senior council were Langtree, Mai, Petrovic, Liberty, Listens to Win, Lafortiere, and Rashid. Petrovic passes in the war against the Red Court, and McCoy steps in to fill his place, specifically to contest Langtree's block of power that prevents him from moving unilaterally against Harry. So Langtree's loyal block of power on the senior council is himself, Mai, and Lafortiere. McCoy and Listens to Win are their own minority block, with Rashid and Liberty as swing votes. In Summer Night, McCoy persuades Liberty to join his block for this specific vote against Dresden, and Rashid kicks his vote to how Harry resolves the issue with Mab. It's been over a dozen books since then, and what's changed? Rashid seems to have largely joined McCoy's block, in large part due to Harry's involvement, giving them a 3-7 share of the votes. Meanwhile, Lafortiere was ended and replaced by Christos.
Christos' rise to power was purely a political play. Christos had threatened to fracture the White Council by having all the non-Western nations pull out of it. This is one of the examples that show that Langtree, the Merlin, is focused on the politics of the White Council and keeping it together. Keeping wizards unified under one body is the goal here. Because of this, I think that Langtree is just doing what he thinks is best, and not working out any sort of personal affection for Harry when he was cast out.
Publicly, Christos is the leader of a minority group of power within the White Council, the wizards from non-Western nations, and he got a spot despite being incredibly far down the list in order to appease that faction. McCoy and Harry suspect that Christos is part of the Black Council. So what happened to Langtree's base of political support through this? His primary antagonist in council politics, McCoy, has gained more power. He lost a loyal ally in Lafortier, who has been replaced by someone who is, one way or another, entangled in a third faction. Langtree may or may not be Black Council. I suspect not.
It would be a twist and a half if Langtree was under the control of Nemesis or part of the Black Council. I'm not sure he would even realize that he was. After all, Lucio didn't. Langtree's super powerful, but I don't know if he's powerful enough to pierce the veil on this one.
But he's gone from having a steady 4-7 majority to having 2-3 votes. It's not clear how frequently Liberty joins Langtree's bloc, and he has Harry to thank for that. What's more, there's a rising faction of young wizards who admire and are more sympathetic to Harry.
Damn those millennials!
And many of them were promoted early into the ranks of the Wardens due to the demands of the war with the Red Court. Harry has made friends and alliances with Lucio and Ramirez and was involved in training and teaching many of the younger generation.
It's almost as if Harry's the good guy or something. What are the odds?
Not to mention that Harry has accrued all kinds of power: Soulfire, Demon Reach, Pull in the Winter Court, the favor and attention of both Vatterung and Hades, and whatever benefits the Starborn entail.
You're the chosen one, Harry.
We don't know how much of that stuff Langtree knows about, but even just looking at what's publicly known, Harry's becoming a more and more formidable opponent, and is pretty overtly McCoy's ally and not at all Langtree's. So it has been accomplished by throwing Harry out of the White Council and passing and suspending a sentence. Langtree knows that Harry won't stop practicing magic or calling himself a wizard.
So basically Langtree has an excuse to do whatever he wants with Harry. Great!
So he basically has the freedom to personally clear a warrant on Harry at any time.
Told you so! My one pet peeve about doing these videos is sometimes you find a response is just so well thought out that you can't think of a response.
He also knows at bare minimum that McCoy will go to great lengths to protect Harry, and probably either knows or surmises a whole lot more. Kicking Harry out under specific provisions means that Langtree has, 1, letter of the law protection against retaliation from Mab, to take Harry out, since he's given specific provisions for Harry to avoid provoking the warrant.
I bet Langtree is one of those petty toxic people who use rules to misplace blame and project their will upon others. Like the person who hurts you because apparently you made them do it. There's a special circle in hell for people who think that that is acceptable behavior. 2, a weakening of Harry's, and by extension McCoy's, influence and support among members of the council. 3, leverage on McCoy whenever he needs, because at any time he can order the Blackstaff McCoy to go and hurt Harry, and know that he'll either get rid of the nuisance of Harry or force McCoy out of the council along with him. And 4, leverage on Harry should he ever try to enter back into the council. In short, Langtree has shored up his own political power in the council. And, as has been highlighted in Battleground specifically in reference to the Eye of Balor, the wizards of the White Council are interested in their own power. Ostensibly, it's to keep anyone else from misusing it, but we all know that they just want leverage for themselves. That's another thing that toxic people do. They use the idea of working for a cause in order to further their own political power. A good point that this response brought up is that even though Langtree might on the surface work for the greater good, he's actually just working for himself. Since the right thing to do and what he wants to do kind of coincide this time, he's using it as an opportunity to consolidate power. Kind of like what every leader of every accorded nation, real and imaginary, does. But it's totally okay because the rest of the accorded nation's people are monsters! Which is why a lot of the laws of magic don't apply to them. See the first law. It's okay to take out a vampire with magic, but you do that to a human, and you're done. What's more, we have explicit confirmation in Battleground that the Starborn are a sufficiently big deal, and that a whole bunch of different factions have been maneuvering to manipulate them. And if Listens to Win is part of a faction that's been specifically seeking to oversee the care and feeding of the Starborn Harry, you can bet your ass Langtree is involved somewhere too. I don't think Langtree's secretly on Harry's side. I think Langtree's loyalties are to himself, the White Council, and humanity, in that order. Which means keeping Harry on the field is a tool to be used against the outsiders. Harry has proven to be particularly resistant to being bossed around unless you have strong leverage against him. So of course, Langtree is going to jump at the chance to obtain that leverage. I think that Dresden has had to deal with situations that put other people with much more leverage over him than what Langtree has over him right now. See every single Dresden Files book ever. Thank you. And well stated. Langtree is, in short, a politician first and a wizard second. He didn't gain his position collecting bottle caps. But he'd much rather earn influence than spend power. Primarily because the first gains power for himself, and the second risks it. Harry is dangerous to the Merlin because Harry is anti-politician. That he knows the game and refuses to play it only makes him more unpredictable.
And if there's anything a politician hates, it's unpredictability. That was a possibility I had considered, but you both blew me out of the water on that kind of theory crafting. I find the Merlin being a secret ally more fun to speculate on. That was an intense read. Humans are complex and contradictory. Both things could be true. Langtry sees himself as being a protector of humanity, but over time, ambition and fear clouded his judgment. And remember, he was gunning to take out the Red Court, so he is not just interested in power for power's sake.
Are you sure about that? He could say he's doing it for the greater good, but if you take out the Red Court, it's one less group that you have to deal with and keep tabs on. So you might have seen some strategic value in that pursuit. Also, he might have even gotten to the point where he believes his own BS. That might not be the same thing as getting corrupted by Nemesis, but it's still corruption. This might be a metaphor for a deeper thematic element throughout the Dresden Files series. The idea that power corrupts is nothing new, but because Harry refuses to play politics, we get to see the council from a perspective that isn't, the council's. It also reminds me of the scene when Harry was a teenager, where Elaine was enthralled and he came home and found her. There was a straitjacket on the table, and Justin and Morn also had his copy of Lord of the Rings, which, while being the granddaddy of fantasy, is also a series about power corrupting people. I think that this idea will play an even bigger thematic role as the series progresses, especially since we have all this exciting endgame stuff going on. Looking forward to it.
I agree with you on all you wrote, except for the order of Langtry's loyalties. I really do think he is one of the chief player on Team Anti-Outsiders. Why? He is the best defensive mage in the world. He believes deeply in protection and status quo. Therefore, I'd say his loyalties are humanity, the White Council, himself. But he sees himself as irreplaceable. That's why he's not doing anything self-sacrificing anytime soon.
My name is V, this is Caffeinated Covers, and if you like what I do, hit the subscribe button and join the Caffeination. We'd love to have you. I post bookish videos every week. If you have anything to say, and I know you do, leave me a comment down below. And if you think I suck at this whole booktube thing, also leave me a comment down below and I'll try to suck better next time. Bye!